Welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. On tonight's show, we're talking about how to raise happy children without losing your identity in the process, and some common pain points like when to put them to bed and how to get them to eat what you put in front of them at the table. I'm so pleased to have with us our special guests, Erica Fraser and Carrie Owen, in the studio with us tonight. Now, we were talking a little bit in the last segment about guilt, and guilt seems to be a very prevalent topic throughout the motherhood journey. Erica, tell me a little bit about what guilt looked like for you as a mom.
Oh my goodness, it's so crippling. It is every component of everything that you do. There is not, and I'm working towards it slowly, and I find as my kids get older, it sort of lessens, and maybe you found the same thing because you have older children. Mm-hmm. But in those early stages, it's guilt around feeding, it's guilt around being present all the time, it's guilt around sitting beside your children and playing with the baby that doesn't need to be played with. It's guilt around, there's nothing that you don't feel guilty about, and it's such a crushing feeling. It's so overwhelming.
I want to talk about how that translates into feeding strategies and getting your kid to eat. But first, we have a caller on the line. Marie, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Hi, thank you so much for calling. What was your question?
Thank you for having me. I'm calling because I was wondering about what you thought in regards to, the pendulum seems to have swung so far the other way to keep our children happy that discipline seems to have paid the price in that. And I wonder where you felt, at the cost of keeping our kids happy, do you think that discipline has sort of been sacrificed in that? And how important do you think it is, to be more, to keep children, and I'm not talking about hard discipline necessarily, but even timeouts and things like that, when you're trying to keep your child happy, you sort of forego the discipline area. I'm just wondering your thoughts on that.
Great question, Carrie. I see you nodding your head.
I am. I hear what you're saying, and what's so important for all parents to remember is that you are the parent. You set the plan. And by focusing on what's positive is going to encourage that positive behavior, but always you have the plan. So in the area of feeding, every single meal and every single snack, you don't ask your child what they want. You say, here's supper, here's lunch, and maybe they get to choose a snack. And when parents say, well, I'm really working on my attachment and I don't want to say no and I don't want to upset them, I always remind parents that at some point you're going to be crossing a busy road with them, you're going to want them holding on to your hand, and you're going to say, you need to hold on to my hand. So they need to know when you as the parent set that strong limit, you're going to follow through. But the very best you can do is focus on the positive. When things start falling away, don't give them a lot of attention for that. That would be one of my suggestions.
And anything to add to that, Erica?
Yeah, actually, it's really interesting, this point, because I had this conversation with my mom the other day because she felt as though maybe I wasn't disciplined enough with my daughter. And we had the conversation that right now, I'm in the stage where he's not a newborn anymore, but he's still my baby. He's 10 months old, so I still felt until recently that I was very much in survival stage. So some of I pick the priorities with her discipline. I pick the battles and I pick the strategies, and then I let other things go. That's my struggle with that. I absolutely think that I could be more disciplined, and I think that the trend is getting to more detachment parenting and not timeouts, and not like we don't spank our kids anymore. But it's hard, right? At what point do you say, I'm going to be strict, but focus on yourself and surviving as your family and focusing on the other members of your family too?
Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question, Marie?
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Carrie, I want to switch over to feeding strategies. I see you have some props to show us. What have you got there?
I do. Well, parents feel that the most important job they have is to feed their child. And sometimes that's extremely frustrating. Either the early bottle feeding or breastfeeding hasn't gone well, or as you're transitioning to solids, the child doesn't want the food. Parents have high expectations. They want only organic organic food, and they want a well-balanced meal. And I always suggest that feeding has to be fun, and sometimes looking at the toddler plate, it can be tiny, small amounts of food. And when you're introducing a new food, maybe you don't want them to eat it, you just want them to kiss it, or just to touch it, or just to squish it. So using fun little utensils, a lot of them from the dollar store, can engage your child in the food. And I love the way you had that whole cat food set up, because sometimes just playing and exposing children to food and letting them know it's fun. And definitely, whatever is your family food is a food you want to introduce. There is no one way to introduce food to a child.
Now, what age group are we talking about here?
So for a plate like this, I start introducing little bits of food anywhere from 5 months on. And to start using some of these utensils, we're looking between 1 to 4. And as soon as the child is sitting in the chair, you want them to have a little dipper.
I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, they can just dip it in a puree, and they manage to bring it to their mouths. As you're starting to do more solid foods, the other ones have a hole in it, and you can squish a banana through it. So they really pull it in their mouth, move it all around. They have a lot of independence and a lot of fun, and they feel safe. And as a child starts to feed themselves, they're going to become a better, more functional eater. And by the terrible twos, or the challenging twos, they want to do everything by themselves. So it's good to have them self-feeding before that age if possible.
Amazing points. We have another caller on the line. Julie, are you with us?
I am.
Thank you so much for joining us. What was your question?
So I have 4 kids. I have a 17-year-old, I have an 11-year-old, I have a 3-year-old, and a 3-month-old.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hats
crazy.
off to you.
So my 3-year-old, like, it used to be like me and him, you know, he was my last little one, and we used to do everything together and go shopping together, everything. He was my little buddy. And now that I just had the other baby, Ethan, my 3-year-old, every time we go to the store or do anything, he is so misbehaved that now I have so much anxiety to even, like, say, take him to Walmart, because he runs all over the store and just really bad. And I'm sure that, you know, parents are looking at me like, oh, my God, get your kid under control. But I don't know what to do. Like, I'm struggling, and now I don't leave the house because it gives me so much anxiety to take him out.
Erica, what do you think?
So, again, I would look up to you because you have 4 kids, and I feel like I only have the 2. But my daughter Aubrey has had a lot of behavioral issues. We've been that person in Walmart where I've left the cart, literally thrown her over my shoulder, and grabbed the bucket seat and just like, I'm done. We're walking out. We're leaving. The one thing I find that really helped me was I often thought, hey, they're judging me, they're thinking badly of me, but often they're looks of solidarity. You got this, you can do this. And honestly, if they don't have kids, they can deal with the kids crying for 2 minutes. They go home to a quiet house, so
Yeah.
Oh,
that sounds great.
I remember one time, Bloor Street, my child had a huge meltdown, wouldn't get back into the stroller, about 2 years old. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? He's screaming, and an 80-year-old woman came up to me and said, all mothers go to heaven. And I felt so much better. But I also would suggest giving your child some advance notice. We're going to play, here's a picture of us playing, then we're going to go into the car, then we're going to shop, and then we're going to do this. And give him a little idea of what's coming next, and then a little warning, we're going home soon. Because it can just feel overwhelming for a little one in a store.
So we always know what to expect, basically.
That might help. Or have little cards, which you're going to hear about in the next section tonight, on here's a picture, we're doing this now, here's a picture, soon we're going home.
How do you stay calm as a parent?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. For me personally, I've just kind of stopped caring what other people think, and that's a hard thing to do, but it's there's nothing more that I can do, right? In that moment, I'm doing the best that I possibly can, and there's nothing more that I can do in that point. I also take deep breaths and put ice packs on my head when I'm really going to lose it. That helps a lot.
I think counting to 10 used
does
to get
help
me through it.
Yeah.
And also looking at what I'm putting in one day. How many activities can I really do with that child? And sometimes I used to have to say, okay, this is my responsibility. I put too much on this child for today. And you know what? We survived it and we got through it, and tomorrow will be a different day. And I'll do it a little differently.
This too shall pass. Thank you so much for joining us, Julie. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
We just have a couple minutes left before the end of our time together. Erica, did you have any last thoughts that you wanted to share with our viewers? Any thoughts on motherhood? Or
you know what? It's just, I find that all moms, myself included, there's this never-ending to-do list, and there's this never-ending mental load that we put on ourselves. We're putting so much pressure on ourselves. We're literally doing everything, and that's one of the reasons why Mum Break started. It's not just about giving yourself a break and going to the spa for the day or just hiding from your children. It's about throwing yourself a bone too, right? Like sitting in the car and taking the long way home, so you get an extra few minutes to listen to an extra song.
Right, because self-care doesn't have to cost money. It's not just manicures and pedicures.
And it doesn't have to be labeled self-care, because I find as a new mom that can be very overwhelming, because the idea of even showering is exhausting when you're in the early stages of motherhood.
It almost makes you feel even more guilty, right?
Absolutely. It's just a vicious spiral.
Yeah. What about you, Carrie?
I would say, as a parent, never say never. You know, I'm never going to give my child sugar. I'm never going to allow them to drink more than 2 cups of orange juice. Each child is very unique, and as a parent, you have to manage each child in a different way. You're setting building blocks, and maybe you're going to start one day with a bear paw, and 3 months later, that's going to be a homemade protein bar. So don't add more pressure, and accept that food can be fun, and there is no one rule to any part of parenting.
Now, do you have some upcoming events coming up?
Yes, I do. I have a workshop where I'm meeting with families, meeting with parents in my clinic.
Where can we get information about that?
If you go to Sweet Pea Therapy, my Facebook, you will get all the information, and it's talking about expanding food and introducing solids.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure hearing your expertise. Don't go away. When we come back, we've got 2 new guests to talk about how to take time for yourself as a mom and how to enforce discipline for spirited children. We'll be right back.